What's good here? It's Wrestle Kingdom, and today we're going to be discussing the recent episode of NXT, the Go Home show of NXT before the Go Home show to Stand and Deliver this Saturday, man. And we're going to be discussing all the key points all the key things that happened in the recent episode of NXT. First up, we got the number one contender tag team triple threat match between LWO, Nathan Frazier, and Axiom versus the Good Brothers to see who would go on to face Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker for the NXT Tag Team titles. This was a very good match, very fast paced, very high flying. They pulled some crazy stunts in this match. Of course, when you have the LWO with Joaquin Wild and Cruz del Toro, and then when you have Nathan Frazier and Axiom, the match is going to be a banger. Those two teams pull some wild stunts in this match. They are, especially with their ability of the high flying moves that they do and how fast paced they are. This was a really good match. Nathan Frazier and Axiom pulled the victory. It only makes sense for them to go to Stand and Deliver and possibly dethrone Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker. They're the only team that is actually on NXT consistently. LWO and the Good Brothers, they really don't need the victory, mainly because they're already on the main roster, and plus we already know after Stand and Deliver, most likely they won't be in NXT anymore, so it only makes sense to give it to the actual NXT team to actually dethrone another NXT team. Next up, we got a quick segment with Ilya Dragunov. He's walking out the NXT building, tries to go to his car, but realizes he has something on his tire. I don't know what it is specifically, but it's the yellow thing on the tire. Basically, you can't drive it. I forgot exactly what it is, but he basically has something on his tire, so basically he can't drive. A car pulls up, and it's Tony D'Angelo's people. They pull up on him, and they end up saying, "You should have paid those parking fines. Do you need a ride?" Ilya Dragunov declines. But then the driver, well, the guy in the passenger seat, ends up says Ilya's name and says, "Get in the car. You don't want to keep the Don waiting." He said it super aggressively. I love that, man. It's showing little things like this. Is really showing Tony D'Angelo's like power, because they're really going with him being like basically, especially later on what happens in the show, like he really gives off like a full like mafia drug lord type feeling, and little things like that. The fact that he was able to just force Ilya to do that when Ilya didn't want to do that was crazy. Next up, we got Fallon Henley versus Jason Jane. Um, these two are feuding, but they're helping out Thea Hale in the feud, because originally these two was feuding with Kiana James and Izzy Dane, who are alliance with JC Jane. So Fallon Henley and JC Jane, they're having a decent match, but Jason Jane, of course, has Kiana James, Izzy Dame, and she has Jasmine Nix, I think that's her name is. And then Fallon Henley has Thea Hill and Keelani Jordan ringside. So they have their members ringside, but of course, with Jason Jane and her members, of course, it was going to be some interference. Plus, they have more members because it's four of them versus only three of them in total. So later, towards the end of the match, JC Jane gets on a rope, distracts Fallon Henley, jumps off. Fallon Henley ends up, Fallon Henley tries to attack JC Jane. No, try to attack Kiana James. My fault. Got them two mixed up. Tries to attack Kiana James. Kiana jumps off the ropes, gets Fallon Henley distracted. Thea Hale, tired of the distractions, comes in the ring, do a suicide dive on Kiana James, and then starts attacking her. Of course, she ends up getting beat up because there's only one of her. Izzy Dane picks her up, starts attacking her. Then Kalani Jordan tries to help, but then Kiana and Jasmine Nix end up double teaming them. Then Fallon Henley comes out, ends up able to take out Kiana and Jasmine Nix. Goes back in the ring, but when she comes back in the ring, JC Jane hits her with a flying knee, then was able to pick up the victory. 1, 2, 3. Jason Jane wins via distraction of Kiana James. We get to a backstage segment after the victory. JC James excited for a victory, and she cuts a little. She has a little segment. She ends up talking directly to the camera. Ends up saying that it feels good to finally be back on top. Feels good to finally be the main attraction. And she ends up mentioning about why she joined Chase U, why she became Thea Hill's friend. End up saying that she had to lower herself to be her friend, and that she was never Thea Hill's friend. She was never really part of Chase U. She talked about how she saved Chase U, which is true. She mentions that how that the only reason she did all that, became your friend and did all the things for Chase U, was to become the main attraction of NXT, become the main woman back in NXT, and to get the spotlight that she should have never left. Then we get Thea Hale, Kalani, and Fallon Henley comes backstage right after she cut that mini segment. Thea Hale's her typical character, being this super hyper energetic woman. She's yelling and screaming. You could barely understand her. Ava Rain finally had enough. She said, you know what? We're going to make it official. So now it's officially a 6-woman tag match between Kalani Jordan, Thea Hale, Fallon Henley versus JC Jane, Kiana, JC Jane, Kiana Jane, and Izzy Jane. So it's official. It's going to be a 6-woman tag team match. Can't wait for that match. Very interested to see how that go. Definitely going to make a prediction video very soon. Should be coming out Thursday. But next up, we got the Von Wagner and Lexis King match. Not really much to really go off of this match, to be honest with you. This match is happening mainly because Lexis King and Von Wagner is having a feud based off Lexis King end up embarrassing Von Wagner's friend, Mr. Stone, and Von Wagner is trying to get revenge on Lexis King. This was a decent match. Lexis ended up winning, which was very shocking because it was how he won. I thought he was going to do some type of heel tactic to win, but he really didn't do anything heelish to really pick up the victory. He got it fairly clean, so that's very shocking. So I wonder how they go from here, because he beat both of them clean. It'll be different if he lost in a cheating way, but you lost to them clean, so I don't know how they were going to continue this feud, or maybe the feud is over. But I'm very interested to see how they play on that. Next up, we have a quick segment with Ariana Grace and Ren Sinclair. Ariana Grace, she's trying to get prepared to basically change Gigi, give Gigi Dolan a complete makeover. She's wondering where her Gigi is. Of course, she ain't going to show up. Gigi lost the bet because last week they had a match where if Ariana Grace wins a match, she's able to give Gigi Dolan a complete makeover. So she's trying to do that. Gigi Dolan is not showing up. Ren Sinclair shows up, is wondering why does she have all these dresses, because she has a bunch of dresses for her. Ariana Grace basically, says that she's trying to change Gigi and trying to make her into a better woman. Ren Sinclair ends up saying something along the lines, if I'm not mistaken, about Gigi Dolan doesn't really need changing. And then, originally Ariana Grace said something about pageant. Because Ariana Grace calls herself Miss Ariana Grace in terms of like winning a pageant. She's like a beauty pageant queen. That's like her gimmick. So Ren Sinclair ends up alluding that isn't the point of pageants is to be your true self and not align with some beauty standard. Ariana Grace does her typical over the top, getting offended. And she ends up saying that, are you insinuating that I'm trying to change Gigi for the worse? Ren said, yeah. Ariana Grace said, those are fighting words. And then we lead to having a match later on. Next up, we got Lola Vice versus Carmen Petrovic. There's really not much to say about this match, to be honest with you. It was a fine match. The right winner won. Lola Vice ended up winning this match, rightfully so. No need for Carmen to win. No offense to Carmen. This was a decent match, I would say. One thing is Carmen Petrovic did have Natalia ringside, because last week Natalia ended up beating Lola Vice, and she wanted to teach Lola Vice a lesson. So she was trying to help Carmen out, but ends up losing. One thing I will say that was cool with Lola, and Lola is starting to win me over. I wasn't a big fan of Lola, but I'm starting to like her more. At first I wasn't really feeling Lola, but I'm starting to like her more. One thing I like about in this match is the way she won. Because Natalia's finisher is the sharpshooter. She's known for that. Lola Vice ends up doing the sharpshooter, staring at her. While doing it, she starts sticking her tongue out. And then she ends up picking up the victory like that. I really love that. And then after the match, which was very strange, she does her typical like dancing thing where she shakes her, basically twerking, but she's doing like a side hip thrust. She's doing her little side hip thrust, but she keeps staring at Natalia while doing it. Like, it keeps going. Like, typically she does it for like, 5-ish. No, she's doing this for like 15, 20 seconds, just staring at Natalia. And they're not going on commercial. They're not changing the segment. That I find it a little weird, but also funny. But that was a very good that was some good stuff. I really like that. That's actually kind of winning me over. I like stuff like that. It's very stupid, but it's good heel work from Lola Vice. Next up, we got Ilya and Tony D'Angelo. Ilya finally gets dropped off to the place. They get dropped off to this warehouse, and the way they're setting it up, no lie, they're setting it up like this is like some warehouse for drugs. Like, because he walks into the place and he has a bunch of goons with him. And they're basically, the way it's set up, it's set up like a drug show where like the guy goes into the warehouse, and how they steal to take the weapons away and all that, and then you have all the goons there just looking at him while he goes in the warehouse to finally meet like the drug lord or whatever. That's what it felt like, because they was doing things that was kind of being intimidation. Like, just one of the goons was like cutting something up with a saw. They was cutting like a board with a saw, and they were just focusing on that. And then that's the way they was setting this. They was setting this up like these a bunch of drug members. I mean, gang members. And then Ilya is just the lone guy that just has to do what the real boss says. Like, that's the way they set this up. They get all the way to where they get to a table, and then Ilya sits down. While he sits down, literally he's surrounded. It's like a big circle surrounded by all the members. Tony D'Angelo comes out. He sits down with Ilya, and then it says to be continued. So we have to see until later on to see what ends up happening. Next up, we have the Supernova sessions between Lyra Valkyria and Roxanne Perez. This was a solid promo, really good. Little disappointed in Roxanne Perez. I'm going to mention that after this segment, but this was a good segment overall though. So Roxanne Perez starts off, talks about how she's going to win her NXT title back and how she's going to get the title she never lost. Lyra Valkyria is sick of it. She's tired of Roxanne Perez coming up with excuses, and she calls out her hypocrisy. The number one thing she called, because Roxanne constantly talks about how she never lost the title and how she deserves to have that title. But Lyra Valkyria ends up mentioning that you had an opportunity to get your title back. You lost it, and you lost it in a ladder match. Indy Hartwell was able to climb a ladder faster than you, which is true. She said you also had another opportunity where Lola Vice, where at Avengers Day when they had their match, but you blame Lola Vice for cashing in her breakout tournament contract. Then she ended up saying that you're mad at Lola Vice for cashing in because it was a surprise. But then she ends up mentioning that the way Roxanne Perez even won her title in the first place was very similar to Lola Vice. It was a surprise. No one expected it. So it's very hypocritical for you to blame Lola Vice, which was very good because she isn't wrong there. It is very hypocritical to blame Lola Vice for that, even though you won your title the same way. Roxanne Perez, of course, is getting angry. She said, you don't know me. You don't act like you understand me. Roxanne is saying that, ends up saying that you've been riding your high horse since you've been the number one woman for 6 months, and you don't know what it's like to lose the championship. She says that she's going to beat her at Stand and Deliver, and she says that a true champion isn't about when you become champion. A true champion show their colors when after they lose the championship, which I did like. I did like that line. She mentions about how she changed and mentions that how when Lyra Valkyria originally broke, not broke, but when she snapped her arm, she said that the old Roxanne Perez can never do that. She's a totally different person. She's better than what she better than what she was before. And she mentions that and she ends up saying that you think that me losing the championship broke me. No, it just made me more dangerous. Lyra Valkyria is just not having it. She's just sick of Roxanne Perez. She's sick of the things that she keeps saying. Lyra Valkyria ends up bringing up how she ends up calling out Roxanne again, and she says, "You keep saying this is your championship." But she said it wasn't your championship when Tiffany Stratton was holding it. It for sure wasn't your championship when Becky Lynch was holding it, which is very true. Because before Lyra Valkyria won, she was not talking about her championship. She was not. She was trying to get back into the title scene. Yes, she was trying to get the title back, but she wasn't really saying it was her championship. Then after she says that, she said that the main difference between her and Roxanne is that when all she does is win, all Roxanne does is bitch. That made me pop because I was not expecting that at all. I was very shocked when Lyra Valkyria said that. And then after she said that, she said, and after Stand and Deliver, she's going to have a whole lot to bitch about. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. That was a really good line. And I love how Lyra Valkyria is calling out Roxanne Perez, even though I am kind of on Roxanne's side because I kind of want her to win. But that was really good. Roxanne Perez ended up responding, saying that Lyra wants to be the perfect champion, but there is no perfect champion, and that she has a year of rage and how she's going to unleash all of that rage onto her. Then after she says that, they have a mini brawl. This brawl did not last long, which is one of the reasons why I'm kind of disappointed. They end up, doing the typical where they're punching each other back and forth. That lasted like 5 seconds, and then Lyra Valkyria picks Roxanne up, does an attitude adjustment onto a table. That was very shocking because I'm like, okay, you just beat her up like that quickly. And then one of the main reasons why I was kind of disappointed was Roxanne Perez. In this promo, she really didn't say much. Like, she just said the typical thing of, I'm going to beat you, and that's it. She really didn't. Lyra Valkyria basically cooked her on the mic. And the thing is, Lyra Valkyria is not even all that on the microphone. But she basically demolished Roxanne on the mic. And the fact that you got demolished on the mic and then got whooped that easily, I ain't gonna lie, it's low-key changing my prediction. I ain't gonna lie. We're gonna see Thursday, because I will drop that video Thursday on WrestleMania and Stand and Deliver. But it's low-key changing my prediction of maybe Lyra is just gonna retain. I ain't gonna lie. But next up, we got Joe Gacy and Oba Femi. The match is about to begin. Joe Gacy is making an entrance. Sean Spears comes out with a chair, hits Joe Gacy, leaves, getting payback for last week when he had his match against Dijak. Sean Spears had a chair. He was trying to use the chair on Dijak to win, but the chair ended up disappearing. Joe Gacy is the reason why it disappeared, so he ends up getting his payback. Oba Femi, Joe Gacy had a match. Joe Gacy, of course, is playing up to the fact that he's injured with the back. Not really much to say here. Oba Femi wins. He basically dominated Joe Gacy. He didn't even get a pinfall or submission. They just stopped the match because Joe Gacy couldn't go anymore. Next up, we got the Ariana Grace and Ren Sinclair match. This doesn't really need much explanation. Ariana Grace won the match by cheating. She ends up getting a pinfall where she ends up holding the ropes, getting the quick victory. Not much to say here. Not much really changed after this. Now we get to the Ilya Dragunov and Tony D'Angelo scene, the scene that was end up being to be continued. All right, both men are sitting down. Tony D'Angelo, and the first thing Tony D'Angelo said to Ilya Dragunov he says he ends up mentioning his parking situation, dealing with his car. He was like, he said, did you pay those parking fines? Those parking tickets. That's what he said. Did you pay those parking tickets? He ended up saying he took care of it. Ilya Dragunov responds, ended up saying that he is very impressed with the length, with the how far, yeah, he's impressed with how far he's willing to go to get the mental edge over Ilya. Tony D'Angelo Ilya responds and says, "Does Ilya understand what it means to be in the building with him?" Dragunov says he understands and done his research on the building. It says this is a very scary place. They never alluded to why that's such, because the place that, because they was building this place up into being like such an important place. I don't know what's so important about it. They never alluded to why, but the place is supposed to be very important. Tony says this place doesn't mean the end of you yet. He said, but it does represent the end of his title reign. Ilya responds back, end up saying that he was basically very like tired and exhausted, like very annoyed when he says this. He said many men have said that, and all of them have failed. Tony D'Angelo ends up interrupting him, responds and says that he's not anybody. He's the Don in NXT. And he said at Stand and Deliver, he would make it look like. Ilya cuts him off when he says, make it look like. Ilya says, make it look like what? Because he said, like you said, I am the unbreakable. He gives his respects. He said that you are the Don in NXT. You are a threat. But at the end of the day, I'm still Ilya. And no one's going to take the title off of me. Tony D'Angelo grabs Ilya's injured hand, because Ilya does have an injured hand from last week when he faced Channing Stats, when he faced Stats last week. He grabs his hand, the injured hand, starts squeezing it, and Ilya's face is turning red. And then Tony D'Angelo got real serious. Like, he's squeezing Ilya's hand. Ilya can't do anything, because basically he can't attack him either, because there's all goons around him. So he's basically, he can't do anything. Tony D'Angelo gets real serious. Tony D'Angelo ends up saying that he could have easily taken him out at any time. And when he says taken out, he's saying it in the sense of like he would have murdered him. That's basically what he's saying. Because what he ends up alluding to later was that I could have taken you out at any time, but I want to do it on the main stage at Stand and Deliver. Then he ends up saying that he's going to be the one to break the unbreakable. And then he ends up, releasing his hand. And Ilya's in pain of the injured hand. Face is completely red. He ends up saying that it's nothing personal. It's just business. Then he snaps his fingers. And then a plate comes out, a fancy plate, because it was supposed to be a dinner. He snaps his fingers, the plate comes out, and he ends up saying that, enjoy your last supper. That is crazy. Like, they're really going all in with this mob boss that Tony D'Angelo is, and I would love it if he just dethrones Ilya. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm still mixed. I'm more 50-50 on it, but they're really building up Tony D'Angelo as this like mob boss with all the power. He could do anything he wants, like playing the mind games of Ilya. This is really good. And the funny thing is, because neither of them are heels, because typically the things that Tony D'Angelo is doing, you would assume that he's a heel, but he's not. He's a babyface. But that was a really good segment. I really love that segment. Very hyped for that match. Can't wait for that match to happen. Next up, we got Sol Ruka versus Blair Davenport. Not much to say here. Sol Ruka basically wants revenge on Blair Davenport for injuring her. She was out for 9 months, so she's trying to get payback. Sol Ruka ended up picking up the victory, which was kind of surprising, because the way they was doing it towards the end, Blair Davenport ended up getting the advantage and was about to hit her finisher, but Sol Ruka reversed it, ends up getting a roll-up, ends up picking up the victory. I wonder how they're going to build up after that. Joe Gacy, after this, Joe Gacy was in the manager's office with Ava randomly. He like came from under the table. I don't know how you didn't know a dude was under the table, but came up from under the table, still selling the back pain. He's exhausted, in pain, and he's basically saying, Sean Spears, I want him, screaming in pain. Ava says, I agree, so I'm assuming Joe Gacy and Sean Spears will have a match at Stand and Deliver. Now we get to the main event. Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes finally have their final face-off. We start off with Trick. He says, guess we should both be happy because we're both main eventing the biggest show of the year. but it wasn't supposed to be like this. He mentions their friendship, how they had a string bond, how strong their bond was. And he also mentions that they are the first two black men to main event a show during WrestleMania, which is true because I know two black women have main evented with Sasha Banks and Bianca, but two black men have never main evented around WrestleMania. And Trick Williams ended up saying that he says he would be happy, but can't be happy because he's going against someone that he used to call his brother. Mello ended up responding to Trick, said he came a long way. Trick responded, said, yeah, he did. He said there was times where he didn't even know he belonged in the industry, but he said you was there and you had my side. Mello says he remembered those times, and he said at one point it was them two against the world. But he said now it's him versus Trick at Stand and Deliver. Then Mello gave his reasoning to why he turned on Trick and why he stabbed his back on Trick. Carmelo gave a very good analogy, and the way he put it, it kind of made me side with Mello, but to be fair, that's not the full story, of course. But Mello gave an analogy of when Trick Williams was the North American champion and lost his title, and then Carmelo lost his title to Ilya, the NXT title. They lost their titles at the same time, and they both agreed that he was going to go after the North American title and he was going to go after the NXT title, which is true. They both agree on that. He referred to their titles as girlfriends. So the NXT title and the North American title are Mello and Trick girlfriends that broke up with them, essentially, that they lost. And they both agreed that they was going to get those girls, aka the titles, back. Then he said that when he saw Trick Williams in the number one contenders match for the NXT title, he realized that Trick Williams was no longer his friend. He is now his enemy because he's trying to take his girl, aka his ex, because he referred to his NXT title as his girlfriend that he lost and trying to get back. He, I did like the analogy because it kind of does make sense. Because if your homeboy tried to steal your girl that you're trying to get back, you will look at him some type of way. I do like the analogy he gave. Trick tells Trick ended up saying if that's your side of the story, that's fine, but that's not how it went down. Trick ended up telling Mello about how he came up to him saying that he wanted to bet on himself and wanted to finally step out the shadow, which is true. He did come up to Mello. Mello ended up saying that and how he supported that decision. Mello ends up saying, yeah, he did mean that. He did admit the words he said. But he said Trick got too caught up in the hype, how he's letting the fans change his mind and how he has the fans having him think that he's somebody that he's not, having him think that he's in a position that he was never made for. Then he ends up saying that no matter what, no matter if I have a championship or not, you will always take a back seat to me. Really love that jab that he threw at Trick Williams. That was a very nice jab he took. Tricks ends up responding, saying that he's done taking the back seat to Mello, and then Mello responds ends up responding to him and ends up saying that what happened to you. Mello ended up responding saying that you've been hot for 6 months. Congratulations. He's been hot for 3 years, and then he ends up mentioning that you're hot now. These fans love you, but he said when the next big thing come, they ain't gonna love you no more, which is very true because wrestling fans, they are very flaky. They are very flaky and wishy-washy because when you're hot, but once that new guy come around, you ain't the hot thing no more. Oh, you ain't getting cheered the way you used to. You may even start getting boos depending on the situation. Trick ends up figuring out Mello ends up saying that I known you for a long time. I know what this is about. You're jealous of me. Mello, one of the main things I forgot to mention during this, every time Mello speaks, he's getting booed like crazy, which I loved. He was just getting booed crazy. Sometimes you could barely even hear him the way he was getting booed. Mello ends up responding saying that he's not jealous and that when it comes to Stand and Deliver, you're going to know why I was the main event, was in the main event, why I was the NXT champion, why they call me him, and why when I shoot, I don't miss. I love that line. He delivered it perfectly too. Then Trick and Mello have a brawl, and that ends the show with them brawling, all the security trying to break them up. But the show ends right there. This was a really good go home show. Really good. Story progressed. They added more matches to Stand and Deliver. I'm going to soon make my Stand and Deliver predictions along with my WrestleMania predictions. I should be coming up with that video Thursday. But what do you guys think of this recent episode of NXT? I thought it was great. Really good. Good way to send the show home before Stand and Deliver. Really enjoyed it. But what did you guys think? Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Give me your thoughts and opinions. But yeah, that's it.